Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wildcard edition of Manz Maker, the DFS show that gets you paid and gets you laid. I am your host, Pete the Manzanelli, and today I am joined by a truly prestigious guest. This is a Manz you can find over at the numberFires. This is a Manz you can find dad running and living the stream in his New Balances. This is a Manz who has an external hard drive of Jeff Fisher gifts. JJ Zacharyason's, welcome to the show, my bro.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm very glad that you mentioned the Jeff Fisher gift library because of all things that I've done in my life, including having my wife gave birth in late July. I'm now a dad. Of all things, my most prized possession is that Jeff Fisher gift library.
I was going to say, dude, I mean, that's, they always talk about like the house is burning down. What do you run in and grab? You're grabbing that 1 terabyte hard drive of Jeff Fisher gifts and running out of there.
That's right. That's right. It is my prized possession. People have asked me if I would put the gifts on Giphy, and I say no, because then I lose my competitive edge.
That's right, dude. You got to hoard them. The Manz also has a lot of his own personal proprietary gifts that he uses. I would like to see those proliferated throughout the space, and yet Twitter isn't returning my calls to get those on there.
Yeah, right. I feel you.
No, but I can tell you are hungry for a Jeff Fisher renaissance because these Jeff Fisher gifts, right? Did I see you might be getting excited about Fisher getting another coaching job here next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he'd be a perfect fit in Miami, right? I mean, Dolphins fans at this point have zero expectations, so why not throw a guy like Jeff Fisher in there who is going to get you 7 wins in a season, right? I mean, at the very least, you're gonna be a fringe playoff team and clearly not make it. Maybe win like 4 or 5 games out of your final 6 or 7 and miss the playoffs, have some false hope, and do well enough you're able to hold on to that job year in and year out. There's no one better, and there's no fit that's better than Jeff Fisher to the Miami Dolphins.
There you go. We need to will it into existence with your my producer and your Living the Stream co-host did a whole show about the secret and manifesting things into reality. So I think if you just continue to throw this out into the world, it will happen.
I agree. I think that we need more people tweeting about it too.
There we go. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised you were even able to do this show. I mean, no Jeff Gisher. Maybe that's the name, Jeff
Giffer. Dude. Yeah.
Dude, there it is. I just coined something. That's just what I do. No, but I was going to say, your Steelers, dude, they're in turmoil. They're in tumult. They're being torn asunder. How are you the man? Well, you're not in Pittsburgh anymore, right?
I'm not. Okay. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina now. I'm far removed from physically from the drama, so that's good.
But I assume you have your sources on the ground that are keeping you plugged in.
Yeah, they're keeping me plugged in. They're letting me know about the crazy Yinzers calling into local radio stations, yelling about the Steelers and them needing to fire Mike Tomlin. The fire Mike Tomlin thing, I feel like now is a time where you can make an argument, but people were doing that in Pittsburgh since 2012. I mean, this has been a constant theme amongst Yinzers is to fire Mike Tomlin. But yeah, they're in turmoil right now, man. It's not looking good. It's not looking good for Antonio Brown. So I as a fan of the team, that's why I'm wearing a Penguins hoodie right now. I'm on to Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and hockey, Manz.
You're making an emotional pivot is what you're doing.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
There you go. No, so what is it your read that Antonio Brown has turned into a maniac because he didn't get the team award like Juju, and he's very jealous of Juju and how good he is at playing Fortnite and connecting with the millennials?
I think that's the latter point that you just made is definitely true. The Fortnite aspect of things. I think that what we don't know is that AB is this closet gamer, and he just hasn't been able to rack him up like Juju has. But I will say there was a Pittsburgh beat writer who tweeted out the timeline, and it sounds like something happened on Wednesday of that week, and then Thursday was the MVP vote, and then Friday is when AB didn't show up and he skipped his MRI or something that he had on his knee. So I think that it was a combination of he gets in an argument with apparently Ben Roethlisberger, which, I mean, if Ben Roethlisberger's your quarterback, you've got to be arguing with him all the time. I mean, that dude just looks frustrating. But I think he gets in the argument with Ben on Wednesday. Thursday hits, and after people get in arguments and you feel a little heated. The next day you're not very excited to go to work or you're not happy about what's going on. And then you get to work that day and your cohort, same position, wins the team MVP. I mean, you can understand to a degree why Antonio Brown was upset. Do I agree? I mean, I'm not someone who's going to storm off and leave my team, but I think that we can at least understand why, at least understand the motive behind why Antonio Brown did what he did.
And I would say that is the mainstream take on the issue, but I would say the kind of the conspiracy truthers out there are saying it was actually Matty Friedman's article saying that AB fell off a cliff that really, triggered this whole mess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's probably some truth to that. I would think that AB is someone who reads the Action Network pretty regularly. So I'd think that maybe that had something to do with it. I think what's crazy is that AB had arguably his best game of his career against the Saints the week before. And I think, this rant that I went on, I have a podcast, the Late Round podcast. I went on this 10-minute rant because you got people talking about how the Steelers didn't make the playoffs because they didn't sign Le'Veon Bell, which is BS. And I explained why. But it's crazy to think of all these small things that happen throughout the Steelers season where there's a pass interference call on 4th down against the Saints, or they don't throw Big Ben back into the game in the second half against the Raiders, or Chris Boswell misses all these key and clutch field goals. If one of those things happens, I don't think that we even have this drama right now.
Yeah, no, that's the what do we know? Winning makes everything bad go away.
That's right. It's all about winning.
That's why nothing bad ever happens in my life, dude, is because all I do is win, dude.
That's right.
So yes, we are here to talk with my dude JJ's about this wild card slate. Some have said it's an interesting slate. Some have said it's a good slate. Some have used other adjectives that get used over and over to describe slates. But today we are going to dig into the weeds of these games. Also want to give a quick shout out. We got the chat going. We got Jason. We got Harbs. The Silvas, any relation to Silva? We got Ethan's. We got Eric Blair's. What's up, dudes? Feel free to drop some questions and I will pass those along to JJ. But I think we just start chronological here at the top. Colts Texans. People tell me this is going to be a shootout. JJ, do I bet all my money on the over?
I think the over makes sense. My biggest fear is that these playoff games generally aren't as high scoring historically. So there's some fear there. But of all the games this week, this is definitely the one that you should be throwing some money in from a DFS standpoint. You're going to want action just because every other game you either have an elite defense with Chicago and Baltimore, or you have two teams that just want to run the football and enjoy running the football and running at a fairly slow pace. But with this game, we've seen, this season already, a lot of passing. Andrew Luck has torched this Houston secondary this year. Deshaun Watson's been running the football a lot more over his last few games. So I think that the over could hit. I'm more inclined, I think, in this game to look at Houston just as the home team. I think betting home teams is smart in the playoffs. We've seen, especially in the divisional round and in the conference championships, home teams have really dominated of late. But Houston, I think with Indianapolis, people are not necessarily paying enough attention to the schedule that they faced down the stretch. I mean, I think that they're a pretty good team and I think they have a really nice future. But at the same time, I do think that home field could play a huge role in this particular game.
Yeah, it does seem like there's this groundswell of people who want the Colts to win, and now it's kind of turned into this thing like they should actually be the favorites, and then we got to kind of pump the brakes. Still know Houston's at home, has that good pass rush. Let's talk about some DFS stuff. I mean, one of the highest projected owned players on the slate, DeAndre Hopkins. He's very expensive over on your FanDuels at $9,500. Can you get away? This show, we like to have a contrarian bent. We like to think outside the box. Are we getting too cute by fading DeAndre Hopkins on this 4-game slate?
No, I mean, I don't think from a GPP standpoint you are. I mean, this is a Colts defense that's actually been pretty good against opposing wide receivers. During the regular season, they gave up the fewest percentage of receiving yards to the wide receiver position because they play that zone. So I think from that standpoint, DeAndre Hopkins is obviously always in play because it's DeAndre Hopkins. He saw the highest target share in football this year. He's always going to be in play from a fantasy standpoint. But this matchup isn't as attractive as what you could find elsewhere. So I think just from that standpoint, sure. I mean, he might not find the end zone. I mean, it's very possible that doesn't happen. So I don't think that he's this absolutely locked and have to play. I think there is one of those players on this slate, but I don't think that it's DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, why don't we just spoiler alert it? Zeke,
It's Zeke. 100 all in on Zeke, 100% Zeke. He should dominate.
Yeah. It seems like his ownership's going to be 80-90%, and I'm hearing people say that the other 10% are donating or paying the rake. So he's close to a lock as you get this week. Although I will say, was it a few weeks back when they were playing the Bucks and he was, like 90% owned across the board, and then he flopped there too?
Yeah, I mean, Zeke. The issue with Zeke is that obviously any time you can see Dak stealing some of those goal line rushes in red zone touchdowns, and that's part of the reason why, of all the elite running backs this season in fantasy, he didn't have as many scores as he probably should have. But again, you just look at the landscape of the slate. There are very few elite running backs. Melvin Gordon's one, obviously, but he's got a really tough matchup against Baltimore in Baltimore. So Zeke, I think, is just the lock button.
Okay, but actually we have a way more pressing question. Eric Belair wants to know, what flavor tea is JJ drinking today?
It's a great question. Well, first off, the Brits will be very upset that I do microwave my tea. So that's I got to get that out of the way. Right now, I'm just drinking a pretty bland green tea. It's called Zen. It's one of those Tazo. I think that's how you pronounce it. That brand, that tea brand. But yeah, it's a pretty bland, easy to drink green tea. That's what I drink throughout the day.
Dude, it's interesting because coincidentally, in accidental serendipitous, coinkadink, I am drinking tea today as well. Little chamomile sleepy time with a bunch of vodka poured in, because that's how the man's rolls. So I will say, JJ, we need to get you one of these electric kettles, dude. That's the way to go, dude. It changes your life.
Apparently, that's what I've heard. I mean, on Living the Stream, I've almost taunted the fact that I microwave my tea, and again, our British listeners are very upset whenever I do so. And they've claimed that it's an awful idea to microwave your tea, but I think it tastes great. You can just plop that thing in, for 2 minutes and 7 seconds is the perfect time for my tea. 2 minutes, 7 seconds, go to the bathroom real quick, wash my hands. I have to throw that in there so people know that I do wash my hands. And then you go back and you got like 13 seconds left and you can just plop that thing out and start drinking.
There, I can't fault you, right? You have a system down. It works for you. You're a creature of habit. Why break the mold?
That's right. Trust the process.
My junior varsity soccer coach, I was not getting any playing time, which is hard to believe what a preternatural athlete I was. We were up 9-0 in a game, and I went over to this Indian man, Bari, and I said, "Hey, Bari, when am I going to get in the game? If not now, when we're up 9-0, when?" Yeah. And he looks at me and he goes, "If it's not broken, I don't fix it." And that was the end of my high school soccer career.
Oh, man, it's rough.
It's very rough, very rough. So if you do fade Nuke, is it Kiki Kuti? Is that where we're looking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can look that way if he ends up playing. I actually think one of my like deep dart throw plays on Houston this week is Ryan Griffin. And the main reason is just because both teams actually in that game are really bad against tight ends, just given the defense that they run. Indianapolis, I already mentioned a low percentage of low percentage of their receiving yards that they've given up go to wide receivers, and naturally that means that running backs and tight ends do fairly well against them. But both teams are 1 and 2 in receiving yards allowed to the tight end position this year. Ryan Griffin's nothing special. He's a staple on the Living the Stream podcast because he's not very good at football. But with that being said, he's running the most routes at the position for that team. And that just inherently, just given his price, he's basically a min-price dart throw. He can open things up a lot at other positions. And, tight end is inherently the most inconsistent position that you're going to throw out there. So it's a position that you can punt. And I think that he's probably the target that you would want to go with and just hope that he can find the end zone or maybe see 5 or 6 targets.
Let me list some names of tight ends who are priced higher than Ryan Griffin on FanDuel this week. Jordan Akins. I believe he's named after the diet. Gerald Adams. Never heard of him in my life. Mo Alley Cox. Definitely love me some Mo Alley Cox. Jordan Thomas. Ed Dixon. Nick Vanette. I mean, you're getting Ryan Griffin at rock bottom prices. He's only 100 more than Tyron Swoops, a guy I didn't even know existed until a few seconds ago.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think that you could just throw darts really at any of, if you're building a lot of lineups, just throw darts at the Houston tight ends and just see if one of them hits.
It's true. It's true. Actually, we have a strategy question from my dude, Jason. He wants to know if you value correlated lineups. I assume he means kind of like game stacks, running backs with the defense, more with smaller slates like this than a normal full Sunday slate.
I think it's kind of tough to value them as much in smaller slates, just because other people obviously are, and there are only so many combinations that you can go with, especially if you're playing a 2-game slate. You know, if you're just going Saturday or something, it's a lot more difficult to only have I mean, you know, on a regular slate, like a 13-game slate, you can get that quarterback wide receiver combo along with a running back defense, and just build off of that. But literally everyone is doing that if you're going to go from that perspective. So if the smaller it is, the more inclined I am to DGAF.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't want to be a dead T horse, but JJ, the haters are coming out. They're saying, how can I take DFS advice from someone microwaving tea? Uh-oh.
It's fair. Look, it's a fair critique. But again, I'm doing what I feel comfortable doing. And look, I've been doing this for years, and people have been taking advice from me for years. So I'm not going to change things up just because other people. I need to stay with this process because it seemed to be working.
That's right, dude. Well, I feel like on your Living the Stream podcast, you guys get a lot of haters for some of your takes, and I think people are just going to have to live with this is what JJ does, and you're going to have to take the takes with the team, my man.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of bravery involved to go out there in front of an audience and say I microwave my tea. So at least respect that.
Yeah, there was a lot of bravery in me doing my Indian soccer coach accent, which Justin Freeman said sound like a Russian petty KGB accent, which I guess we'll have to roll back the tape. I thought I did pretty good. Where do you was that a little Russian, JJ?
I'd give it like a 6 out of 10 maybe.
Okay. Probably shouldn't venture into that territory anyways. I mean, if the Simpsons are getting shit for a boo these days, I mean, I probably shouldn't be doing it either. Yeah. Why we're talking about punt tight ends, they're asking about Hunter Henry's, and I know people like really want to get excited about a min-priced Hunter Henry's, but what are the chances he plays even more than 10 snaps if he does go?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of a lot of things. So it's interesting because Baltimore, if Hunter Henry were 100%, he had played all year. You know, if we're coming from the Stephen A. Smith perspective, I think that Hunter Henry would be a really interesting play because Baltimore is actually not great against that position. They're worse in the middle of the field. They have really good corners, good safeties, but a lot of teams attack them with their tight end. The problem is with Hunter Henry, sure, he's cheap, but we know, like you mentioned, that he's going to be on a pitch count. But then on top of that, you're looking at a cheap tight end that's also going to be fairly high owned for what he is, right? Whereas we're talking these Texans tight ends where no one's really going to be using them, right? Whereas obviously people are going to be on Hunter Henry. So I think for those reasons, I'm not super high on him. I mean, we haven't seen the dude play since last season. So there's reason to not be that into him.
Yeah, it's a sexy name, guys, but you're probably going to get burned if you do it. You know what? We don't have a show sheet for this show, but if we did, we'd just throw it out the window. We're just going to take questions from the chat. We're just going to bounce around. Someone wants to know about if we can safely ignore Ravens wide receivers. Truthfully, I didn't even know the Ravens had wide receivers. So how do I ignore something that doesn't exist in the first place? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think with Baltimore's wideouts, it's John Brown or bust, and you're just hoping that he makes a big play. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But I'm not super into those pass catchers like you. I forgot that they existed.
They don't. Yeah, you know, Willie Snead used to be a thing when he had Drew Brees. John Brown was a thing when he had Joe Flacco. I mean, how quickly do things change, JJ? I mean, John Brown was like the most explosive fantasy receiver for like the first 7 weeks.
Yeah, and then you literally get the most run heavy offense since like 1953 thrown out there, and it just completely destroys John Brown's value.
Yeah. Dan De Silva's wants to know thoughts on going 100% Zeke and Gordon. We know the Zeke side you're on board. What are your thoughts on Gordon? I've been reading these Dr. Chow reports trying to figure out what's going on with that ankle and that knee. I'm a little nervous. Should we be?
I don't think I wouldn't be that nervous about the injury. I just don't think that he's an optimal play per se. I think that he's fine and you should have some exposure to Gordon, but going 100% doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me. I think that there's, you could even look in the same Dallas-Seattle game and look at Chris Carson. He's a pretty good value across sites. You could look at, I like Tariq Cohen on FanDuel. I think that he's just given his price compared to where Jordan Howard's at is really interesting, given the fact that Philly wasn't great against pass catching backs this year. If you want to punt, you could go with Nyheim Hines. He's a little bit interesting. He's seen 5+ targets in each of his last 5 games. I think that there are other secondary running backs or number 2 running backs that you can throw into your roster that you don't need to necessarily lock in Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it is definitely, I'll give it to people. It's intriguing to get someone. The thing that scares me about Melvin is he came back, 2 weeks ago, and they used Justin Jackson as the pass catching back. Right. We got 10 targets.
Right.
And if you tell me Melvin Gordon is going to get back to his full workload, obviously he's a smash play at low ownership. Right. But I think there's legit concerns. Dr. Chow mentioned that he's worried about his ability to cut. He's practicing full, but what kind of range of motion? And if they're worried about cutting, that seems a little more like passing game, open field type stuff. And that's where he's really had those explosive plays this year.
Yeah, and you got to think about opportunity costs with it too. I mean, if you're going to throw Melvin Gordon in your lineup and you have Zeke, right? Because it's a given you're going 100% Zeke. If you throw Melvin Gordon in there, then all of a sudden you might have trouble affording either both DeAndre Hopkins and T.Y. Hilton or even one of them, depending on your construction. So I think it's a little bit of a risky endeavor to throw both of them in at 100%.
Yeah. All right, dude. The chat, man. I give them an inch and they take a mile. I say, ask a question, they ask a million, dude. I'm sifting through these right now. Someone wants to know. I mean, I don't even know if I've ever actually talked about this too much. This is a topic after my own heart, but someone wants to know, does JJ do intermittent fasting?
Wow. I don't. But I've always been interested in it. I have friends that do it. But I don't. I typically I try to eat healthy, right? Try not to my problem is always just like because I'll work out and I just want to eat then all the time, but you gotta chill a little bit. I eat a lot of bananas, a lot of fruit and veggies. Try to do that, but I don't do any fasting.
Yeah, no, I will say it's probably like 60 to 70% responsible for the man's bod. Intermittent fasting. Obviously, the diet is super important. You can't just like restrict your feeding window.
How often are you fasting? How often is the intermittent? Is it once a week?
No. So I don't. Yeah, some people do the like 5 days regular and then 2 days of full. No, I do a daily one. Like I haven't eaten yet today. So basically, what I do is it's a glorified way of saying I skip breakfast. I eat a late lunch and I eat an early dinner so that I'm basically just eating within a small 4 to 5 hour window every day.
Gotcha. So you're doing like a 3 p.m. lunch and then like a 5:30 or 6 p.m. dinner?
Exactly. And on the weekends, I'll throw it out the window and, have fun meals or do brunch or whatever.
Is that like the East Asian way of doing? Don't they do that?
I do know that they call that the warrior diet. Maybe it's the samurai diet.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, we can get into this down the road. We need to talk some football with JJ. But I will say, if you're looking, if you want to build some discipline and look for a way to burn fat easily, it's a great way. Basically, what it boils down to is every time you eat, you're spiking your body with insulin, and when you fast, your body doesn't have anything in its fat stores to burn, so it results to burning the fat that's already existing on your body. So very effective, not for everyone, but could be. Maybe the Manz will come out with an IF ebook. That sounds like a money making.
I think it needs to happen.
I need to talk to CD Carter's about how to sell these calendars and ebooks and get rolling.
That's right.
All right, let's get back to some football here. Dylan Stacks, what a name, dude! Dylan Stacks. That's like the Chris Moneymaker of DFS.
It really is.
Dylan Stacks. He wants to know what wide receivers you like out of T.Y. Hilton, outside of T.Y. Hilton.
Outside of T.Y. Hilton?
Yes.
There's a few. I mean, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is one. I mean, if you're looking like strictly at who is the best value and who you should, I think what's going to be interesting this week is from a roster construction standpoint, to differentiate a little bit, we're going to see a lot of lineups that have Zeke that maybe are able to get DeAndre Hopkins and T.Y. Hilton in, and then you're going to go cheap wide receiver and maybe punt tight end. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are just going to overlook some of those mid-tier wide receivers as a result. So I like guys like Allen Robinson, I think is a really interesting play. Even Doug Baldwin to a degree, given how he performed down the stretch for Seattle. And then obviously you can throw Tyler Lockett in there because he'll have 3 targets and score 3 times because that's his MO. And then Amari Cooper. I like Alshon Jeffrey as well. So I think that you could look in those mid-tier wide receivers in that direction. If you don't, if you're looking from a cash standpoint, I think the look is to go with like a Hilton and Hopkins and try to get at least one of those guys. And then you can look at like a Taylor Gabriel who has a decent target share in his offense. Taylor Gabriel is interesting because everyone kind of looks at him and thinks that he's a high ceiling play and he's a high upside play. But really, the way that he's performed this year, he's been more of a high floor play. He just hasn't found the end zone very often. He's only scored in 1 game this year. It was back against Tampa Bay. He had 2 touchdowns. So I think from that standpoint, I think that Gabriel's more of a cash play. I don't know if anyone heard my doorbell just rang, but I think the people were dropping off some packages. So Taylor Gabriel is probably the cheap one. But the other one that I really like is Dontrell Inman. Since week 8, it's kind of arbitrary, but since week 8, if you want to go since they're bye, he's been the Colts' number 2 wide receiver in terms of targets by a pretty decent margin. So he's the number 3 option in that offense from a pass catching standpoint. Obviously you have Ebron and Hilton, but I think Dontrell Inman's a really good play, especially if you want to just stack that game because it's projected to be the highest scoring one on the slate.
Yeah, it is hard to get off of Hilton, but it does seem like a spot to make a good, ownership-based pivot, especially the way Luck spreads the ball around. Inman has been great, and I think that could be a very sharp play. What about Nyheim Hines? People are starting to get excited about him in the passing game.
Yeah, I think Nyheim Hines makes sense too. And again, I think when you're building GPP lineups, you're really just trying, especially in a smaller slate, you're really just trying to really, really predict how game script is going to go. And if game script does go south for Indianapolis, which again, they're on the road, it's not like Houston's this horrible team. I know it's projected to be a close game and it should be a close game, but you never know. So if it is a game where Indy starts to lose the lead, Nyheim Hines is going to be on the field and he'll see a lot of cheap targets. I mean, he has 5+ targets, I believe, in each of his last 5 games. So I think he's absolutely in play. And again, he's someone that's very, very cheap, especially over on FanDuel.
Yep. Let's talk about this Bears team and this Eagles game since we haven't talked too much about it. Jason wants to know, is this a Howard week or a Tariq Cohen week? And I'll even throw in a third option or an everybody eats week.
I look, if the game flow goes how Vegas seems to think and how some folks seem to think, I wouldn't be shocked if it's an everybody eats week. I wouldn't put them both in the same lineup, but I just like Tariq Cohen's value a little bit more. I think he has a higher floor. He's a little bit safer. Really, we've just seen Jordan Howard find the end zone, and that's why he's been so effective from a fantasy standpoint. I just, if you look at the matchup itself, the Eagles have a lot of the 6th most receiving yards to opposing running backs this season. That obviously helps Tariq Cohen. I just think that he's a little bit of a safer play from a floor standpoint because with Jordan Howard, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's a little bit frightening.
Do you think something that just came to me now, people I know like gravitating toward more of the touchdown reliant plays on FanDuel with the 0.5 PPR? Do you think you can often get maybe in a situation like this where they're close getting Cohen way low under owned because people are getting their Jordan Howard exposure on FanDuel as opposed to the 1-point PPR sites?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with Cohen and Howard, I almost wish that their prices were closer together because Cohen is cheaper, pretty significantly cheaper, just given their production this season. Since Cohen is cheaper, I think more people are just naturally going to gravitate towards Cohen. But if they're closer in price in these situations, I do think a great pivot is to just do what you said and not necessarily go with the guy who obviously is more touchdown reliant because over on FanDuel, it's half PPR and you're just looking for these guys who are scoring touchdowns because it's not like Tariq Cohen can't find the end zone. He's scored plenty this season.
Yeah, and the Bears, almost kind of like the Colts, are one of the good teams to kind of get your contrarian or lower owned plays, just because we don't know with as much certainty where they're going to funnel their offense. We know Nagy can have any game plan specific thing depending on what he wants to do. You know, this is the biggest spread. I believe the Bears are 6.5-point favorites. Do you give a chance to the Eagles to keep this close? There also seems to be a lot of people who are excited about Nick Foles. They like this narrative. They think that he's a magician. I mean, can he pull one out of his hat here on the road in Chicago?
I mean, I love me some Nick Foles. Nick Foles is the man. But I'm not super confident in the Eagles this week, mainly because Mitch Trubisky has pretty extreme home road splits. And so given that they're at home, I think that could play a huge role. We've seen in the past too with Chicago, and with Matt Nagy, they're very okay with going with a pretty extreme game plan to exploit matchups. I always go back to that Tampa Bay game. You remember when things started to turn around for that offense, and they just kept throwing and throwing. I mean, they were up like 38-0, and they're just throwing and throwing and throwing because they were exploiting that matchup. And I think that you can do the same with this Philadelphia defense. So if Mitch Trubisky has at least a decent game, I think it could end up being one of the bigger lopsided results of the week. The one thing is that Nick Foles has been really good against the blitz this season. Now, Chicago can create natural pressure, but it'll be interesting to see that matchup kind of go down just because, you know, if Chicago does indeed want to throw some guys at Nick Foles, he might be able to handle it.
Yeah, that is my favorite kind of tournament pivot, basically saying, what if that Indy, Texans game doesn't shoot out and all the ownership's concentrated there? How can I capitalize? I keep looking to Trubisky and Cohen as guys that I would want to get in my lineup while fading that other game. We have a couple questions here about the Eagles backfield. Justin Freeman's wanting to know about the Adams Smallwood Sproles split. And then Ben asks, is Sproles versus Cohen the most epic mini game we have ever gotten to play?
Yeah. I mean, look, that Eagles backfield to me is mostly hands off, except for maybe you want to throw Sproles in a lineup and just see what happens if they do see that ultra negative script. But it's a horrible matchup for them. And then on top of that, you have like a almost exact 1/3 split between those three backs. We won't know who sees the goal line. I mean, it's just an absolute disaster. And given the fact that there's a chance that they don't score a lot of points to begin with, I don't think it's really worth it. I think that there are other secondary running backs on their own teams, like a Nyheim Hines, for instance, that you could go, or Tariq Cohen, that you could go to instead of having to use those Philly backs.
JJ, when we are old, grizzled men and our grandkids are sitting on our laps, do you think we'll all be watching Frank Gore and Darren Sproles play football together?
Yeah, of course. Frank Gore especially, man. That guy is never, ever going to retire.
He's invincible, dude. And anytime you can get in a backfield with Kenyon Drake, that's going to be great for the guy that's not named Kenyon Drake.
Exactly.
Okay, we got some more questions coming in the chat. Let's actually maybe bounce over to that Seattle-Dallas game. We haven't talked about a ton other than Zeke being a smash play there. The Seahawks are always such a weird DFS team because we know they want to run the ball 30 times, but Russell Wilson has been incredibly efficient. He takes these shot plays down the field to Lockett, and Baldwin's relatively healthy now. Where do you fall on kind of, this pass offense or just mashing in Carson?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I haven't gotten the Seahawks passing game right all season. It's so difficult to just know because it's all based on efficiency, and Russell Wilson's the god of efficiency. So it's tough. So I think that you can spread your ownership around a little bit. Obviously with Baldwin and Lockett being the key beneficiaries of that passing attack. And Lockett can break a deep one at any point. But yeah, I mean, I'm more intrigued by the running backs in this game. Both teams obviously Seattle had an unbelievably low pass to rush ratio in neutral game scripts this year. So if this game does stay close, we know that Shoddy is going to want to run the football, which is not great from a plays run standpoint. The one thing I will say is that since Dallas got Amari Cooper, they've shot up in their plays run category. So that's at least a little bit good and intriguing for this matchup. But I think overall, I think you can scatter some ownership with with Amari and Baldwin and Lockett, and then throw some Blake Jarwin in there, just given the fact that he did what he did in that final week of the season, but also he's running the most routes on that team by far at tight end. He was a guy that on Living the Stream we talked about every week for like 6 straight weeks. And obviously when week 17 hits, when nothing matters, is when he goes off. But I think Jarwin is still in play. And then, both quarterbacks to a degree, they're not my favorite plays this week. I would actually play Trubisky over both Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott. But I think that you can still get some exposure because we know that they can do stuff with their legs and they can make things happen.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the biggest thing when you guys are building DFS lineups this week is because we have some of these teams that play, stylistically so differently. You need to build out these stories. You need to take a stand. Are the Seahawks going to be playing from behind and needing to chuck, or do you think they control the game and can run it? And once you make these individual story narrative stands, then you can start building your lineups accordingly, because otherwise it's too hard to know if this is a Carson or a Russ week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that it's very, very logical to say I'm going to play Zeke and I'm going to just throw Tyler Lockett in that lineup too. I mean, there's a point in time where you can see a scenario where Dallas gets ahead, or the opposite happens too, where you go with Chris Carson and just throw Amari Cooper in there, just because you could see Dallas playing from behind. And realistically, numberFires, we have a metric called Nerd, which essentially
did they name that after you, JJ?
Yeah, they did. That tells you the number of points that we would expect a team to win by against an average one on a neutral field. And Seattle is actually pretty far ahead of Dallas this week. They're about 3 points better within the nerd metric, which again was named after me, the biggest nerd out there. The only reason I had a child was because I needed to prove to people that nerds do indeed have sex. But the Seattle game against Dallas is one of the more lopsided ones from a nerd standpoint. So that makes me a little bit intrigued by taking Seattle in that game and thinking that they might be the one road team that ends up winning this weekend.
Nice. No, I like that a lot. I mean, they named an entire sex after me, but to have a metric named after you, dude, that's pretty good. Deal. No big deal. All right, what do we got going on here? We actually haven't talked too much about the Chargers-Ravens game. Everyone's kind of skipping over this one because I guess it's just not that interesting as far as how many plays you can mash into your lineup. I guess conventional wisdom is Lamar Jackson's going to have a good game. The Chargers are going to struggle on the road, and it's just going to be a repeat of when they played a few weeks ago. Is that a narrative you're buying into?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's logical, makes sense. I think that you should get some Keenan Allen exposure, though, because we know that he can have blow-up games. And realistically, he's going to have a target share that's probably similar to what we see from like a T.Y. Hilton, probably higher than what we'll see from T.Y. Hilton. I think DeAndre Hopkins is the top play, best value play that you can play. But I actually think that Keenan Allen might go a little bit under-owned for what he should, where he should be. It's not like Baltimore is just this complete. I mean, it's not like you can't do anything against that secondary. So, if things do go well for LA, I would assume that Keenan Allen has something to do with it. So I think that he's in play. Aside from him and Melvin Gordon, I mean, again, it's a small slate, so you can throw darts at like a Tyrell Williams if you really want to. But from a Baltimore standpoint, for me, it's really looking at Lamar Jackson. Maybe you want to go with a secondary option at running back, like a Kenneth Dixon, who started seeing more and more love. And then if you do see a negative game script for Baltimore, he's going to be on the field because he's more the natural pass catcher as opposed to Gus Edwards. That's kind of the way that I'm looking at this game. I don't think it's going to be very high scoring. Probably going to be pretty boring, honestly. So that's, I think Lamar Jackson's basically the look from Baltimore's standpoint.
Oh, sorry. I just got beach balled, but I'm back. Do you have me?
I'm here, man.
Okay. No, I heard the end of that take. I think that's the thing that people are struggling with is the Kenneth Dixon versus Gus Edwards. And again, I go back to that, tell yourself a story. Yeah. If you think the Ravens are going to be up a touchdown or two, then you probably just want to play Gus Edwards. If you think the Chargers can be really competitive here, get a lead, then Kenneth Dixon is probably your guy. All right, Ben wants to know, given that the Chargers will have more fans in Baltimore than LA, are we overlooking the Rivers family?
Yeah, right. I think that so it was actually funny today on Twitter. I don't know if you've been following Seahawks Twitter, but Seahawks, like Cable Thanos, has been making those videos, and they've been awesome. But and I sent a tweet about how like I want to be like I'm jealous of Seahawks Twitter because it seems like it's a lot of fun, right? Plus my team, as we alluded to at the beginning, is no longer in the playoffs. But someone replied and was like, "Where's Chargers Twitter?"
Is there a thing?
There is no Chargers Twitter.
Chargers Twitter is that PF Chang's with their social.
You hear, Manz?
Media manager. Sorry, dude. Sorry, I had too many Pornhub windows open there. I got them all.
You're back.
I got them all closed out. No, but seriously, yeah, I was like, the Chargers Twitter. That's like the Baltimore wide receivers. They're not a thing.
Like I've heard from every fan base, right? Like I hear either crap or just whatever. I hear stuff in my mentions from different fans. I don't think, like looking back, I don't think I've ever interacted with a Chargers fan on Twitter.
You know what? There is no hashtag that's Chargers Mafia. I don't think they're out there. They're too busy surfing, dude. Yeah. Justin Justin Freeman, I'll tell you a story. If you guys don't know about this Seahawks Twitter, I do recommend going down this rabbit hole. You know, there's the figureheads at the top. We got Ben Baldwin. We got Mina Khan. Dude, sorry, my thing keeps freezing. This is ridiculous. But Justin Freeman, the story I was going to tell you, dude, is the thing is with Seahawks Twitter has come to a head. Russell Wilson is interacting with this dude, Caleb Thanos, who makes these incredible hype videos.
Unreal.
Just like so fun. And Russell Wilson is now like friends with him, and they're going to play what? Super Smash Bros together?
Yeah, it's an unbelievable story. And like it makes, I mean, you got to like love Russell Wilson for all that too, right? Like people think that Russell Wilson, they have opinions about Russell Wilson. But I think that just like the interaction that you're seeing with players and Seahawks Twitter and like these insane, like the detail of these videos that Cable Thanos is putting together is unbelievable. Like it's unbelievably well done. So funny. I'm super jealous. I wish I was a part of Seahawks Twitter.
I know it does seem like a magical place. They have just this weird, like analytical, but like Tim and Eric, like exactly like vibe. That's just this wonderful combination.
Yes.
Someone asked another Steelers question. I'm not even going to pass it along. I don't want to get you riled up again.
Yeah.
All right, dudes. We'll do one more question here. How the hell did Wilson pull Ciara? That's a little bit old news. He's an NFL quarterback that is very good looking and makes millions of dollars. Yeah. Not that hard to see why he would be with a pop superstar.
Russell Wilson's a good looking dude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe they're referring to the fact that he was famously celibate, but probably that's just a bonus for Ciara.
That's right. Yeah.
Whoa, dude, I've never seen this. A message was retracted in the chat. I wonder what awful thing someone said. Yeah, dude, it says message retracted. Yeah. All right, JJ's. You know what? Do you have a bold call, maybe a player or an upset or something you want to give to the people that they can then at you about for being wrong?
Yeah. So I think my bold call is I'm just gonna die on Ryan Griffin Island.
I like it.
I'm just gonna go with it. I love punt tight ends. I love roster building with punt tight ends. So I'm just gonna go with Ryan Griffin.
Okay, I like it. It's very on brand, very living the stream of you. And yeah, you could. JJ, I would say you could do a lot worse at tight end, like that guy Swoops.
Yeah. I dig it.
Yeah, say no to Tyson Swoops and play Ryan Griffin instead. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate you guys all hopping in the chat. I think I'll keep these going throughout the playoffs, provided we can continue to book sick guests like JJ. You guys got to follow JJ on Twitter if you don't already for some weird reason, at Late Round QB. He's writing stuff over at the numberFires. He has a great podcast, a solo pod that he does without his beta cuck living the stream co-host. So you can check out that one. I mean, JJ, we all know you're the true alpha of living the stream, right?
Dude, I'll tell you what. I've done a lot of tough things in life. Like I said earlier, my wife gave birth in July, and the lead up to that was tough. And now I'm raising a daughter. That's tough. There's nothing more difficult than doing an episode of Living the Stream with Denny Carter.
That's right, dude, because it takes him like an hour to plug in his little Zippo lighter microphone.
That's right.
And then thank God you guys don't do video, because that dude like does it from the most dimly lit basement. You know, his mom's basement needs to get some lights.
I totally agree with you. And I feel like every time, because we do the video stuff, right? Because we're on Skype and we're recording through there. And every time he pops up, he's in a different location. So I feel like, because we know that his wife left him, I feel like he's just kind of house hopping right now, getting couch surfing right now, and trying to find a locale that he can stick with.
That's right. Actually, one more thing before we go. I mean, last time I had you on these Man's airwaves, dude, we were talking some Bachelor, dude. Are you getting hype about the new season? I did watch that trailer the other day. It looks pretty lit.
I'm super hype. I wasn't super excited about Colton being the Bachelor. I'll say that. I think that there are a lot of other. I think that you would be a fantastic choice. But I'm always hyped for The Bachelor, man. It's the greatest television show that's out there, maybe ever created. I'm very pumped for it. It's a great couple hours of my every Monday night.
That's right, dude. Are you gonna fire up that ABC ran the Bachelor fantasy contest? Maybe we get that going again?
Yeah, actually, I got a notification about it like right before we started recording. So I'll send a link. So for some reason they didn't do it last season, so we didn't have it going. But it's back. I will send a link out. Everyone can join, and you're gonna lose.
And do not go Googling Reality Steve for spoilers, you punks.
Yeah, that's the worst. You can't, like, there's no pride in winning if you got the answers.
That's right, dude. So back in the day, I used to do these. It was like the first time I ever gambled. Me and my friends in high school, like when we were freshmen, we would each, for Survivor, we would put the 18 contestants' names in a hat. We'd each put 10 or 20 bucks in, and each pull out 2 names. And if your name won, you got the pool.
I dig it.
But then we started introducing trading and stuff. If you thought you liked, so that's when I started going down the rabbit hole of trying to look at these message boards to see who won. When
there's money on the line, you got to do what you got to do to get the money.
That's right, dude. I mean, can you imagine anything more suspicious than pulling off a trade for the guy that ends up winning it? I mean,
yeah, you're like, no, I need Stephanie. I need Stephanie.
Yeah. Oh, okay. One other thing I want to give to this audience here. Actually, never mind. I'm not. I will save that for myself. All right, dudes. Thank you guys for coming on. JJ, this has been a pleasure. I hope your Steelers get their stuff figured out. Yeah. You are going to be potting throughout the offseason over on the Late Round podcast, right?
Yeah, I'll have a 2 per week. I don't know why I do that to myself, but I'll have 2 per week throughout the offseason so you guys can listen to the Late Round podcast.
Awesome, dude. All right, guys. Have a great Wildcard weekend. Get paid, get laid. We'll see you next week.